Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, where we come to transform ourselves and each other and the world. Let's all unmute for a few moments so we can hear one another say hello. I know it'll take just a minute, but take the time to unmute so we can hear you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good
morning.
morning.
Good
Morning.
Hello, everybody.
This is Greg. Good morning.
Hi, everybody.
Good morning.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
Great rain.
That puppy I know is here.
Great rain we had.
Yes.
Having.
You can see today's order of service by following the link that appears in the Zoom chat or the Facebook Live chat. Please take note of the holiday services and events that are happening over the next couple of weeks. We really hope that you can be there. It's so important to be together on the holidays if we can be. And now, let us begin our service. It is the middle of Hanukkah. We could use a miracle here. I think we've got one. The miracle of people working very hard. So we will tell the story at next week's service. Y'all hearing me? Kay, Marilyn, I can see your picture. Give me a thumbs up if you're hearing me. Yay, thank you. Tech folks, I hear they can hear you too, so make sure to turn that off. Today, though, I want to share these words about Hanukkah by Rabbi Arthur Waskow. And I'm sorry that our chalice is now out of the picture, but I am lighting it. The miracle at the temple, he says, came at a moment of spiritual darkness. A moment of utter darkness in Modi'in, Mattathias struck the spark of rebellion and fanned it into flame. At the moment of utter darkness at the temple, when it would have been rational to wait for more oil to be pressed and consecrated, the Jews ignored all reasonable reasons and lit the little oil they had. In that spirit of the faith that calls something out of nothing, direction out of meaninglessness, we light our chalice. May it kindle hope in the places of despair and numbness. May the flame it ignites in our hearts burn without end. With our centering words each week, we draw on the many sources of our living tradition. Today's words are from Monique Wittig. There was a time when you were not a slave. Remember that. You walked alone, full of laughter. You bathed, bare-bellied. You say you have lost all recollection of it. You say there are no words to describe this time. You say it does not exist. But remember, make an effort to remember. Or failing that, invent. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, let us, after this worry and complication, just become centered and feel ourselves arriving here in this sacred time and space. That's hilarious. I'm just going to stay here.
I can't communicate with them, but it's not working here. So you could tell them to unmute UUCPA service.
Let us now join Bruce in singing We Are. The words are in your order of service and the video is also captioned.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dawn. lost and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
We now turn our thoughts to the important events of our lives, which we wish this community to share. If you have a joy or a sorrow you would like me to speak this morning, please send your joys and sorrows to joyconcern@uucpa.org or post them in the chat box provided by Zoom, and they will be shared aloud. I have a few. Let us then take some moments of silence to hold in our caring hearts, in the concern of our thoughts, all that we've heard, to feel the gratitude of our connection to one another. It is good to be able to help carry one another's burdens and to feel the sweetness of one another's joys. Blessed be. Let us sing again. Bruce will lead us in singing, "We Give Thanks." Again, the words are available on the video and in your order of service. When the dreaded red phone rang inside the Continental Air Defense Command, CONAD, Operations Center on the last day of November in 1955, the mood at the nerve center of America's nuclear defense grew nervous. At a time when the Cold War raged and Soviet fighter jets routinely buzzed dangerously close to Alaskan airspace, U.S. Air Force Colonel Harry Shoup knew that a call over the top secret hotline wouldn't be good news. Anxious that the caller might be the president or a four-star general warning of an atomic attack on the United States, Shoup steeled himself as he answered the hotline that was directly wired from his command post in Colorado Springs, Colorado, to the Pentagon. "Yes, sir, this is Colonel Shoup," he answered in his finest military cadence. Met with only silence, he repeated, "Sir, this is Colonel Shoup." Still nothing. "Sir, can you read me all right?" Shoup asked, before he received a most unexpected reply from the soft voice of a child. "Are you really Santa Claus?" Shoup's eyes immediately scanned the cavernous operations center. Who was the prankster? The deadly serious heart of America's defense against aerial assault was hardly the venue for a practical joke, and the colonel was not amused. "Would you repeat that, please?" Shoup barked. On the other end of the line, he heard the frightened youngster sobbing, and he realized this was no joke. Some mix-up had compromised the top secret hotline. Rather than admitting he wasn't Santa Claus, Shoup quickly assumed the part of Saint Nick and listened to a Christmas wish list before asking to speak to the caller's mother. The mother informed the colonel that her child had dialed the phone number listed in a Sears Roebuck advertisement in the local Colorado Springs newspaper. The advertisement featured an illustration of Santa Claus and an invitation to call him on his private phone anytime, day or night. There was a problem with that printed phone number, however. They had one digit wrong, and it was my father's top secret phone number, Shoup's daughter, Terry Van Curren, recalls. So now the phone is ringing off the hook. He called AT&T and said to give Sears that phone number and get him a new one, but in the meantime, he had to have servicemen answer the calls, she said. When Shoup visited his troops on Christmas Eve the next month to distribute cookies, he looked up at the 3-story tall map of the North American continent that dominated the operations center to see that someone had sketched Santa's sleigh descending from the North Pole alongside the unidentified objects detected in American airspace. The idea for the Santa tracker was born as Shoup looked at that map on December 24th, 1955. And that is how a wrong number launched the NORAD Santa tracker. 65 years later, you can still follow Santa's flight around the world via NORAD, the successor agency to CONAD. In 1997, it joined the internet age, and now there's a mobile app. The year there was a government shutdown that lasted through December, volunteers staffed the tracker and kept it going. Last year, the website got almost 9 million hits.
And is the holly berries few. There's a bunch for the rich man to see his Christmas through, and a sleigh or a spree for the pretty well-to-do. But what of the grumblers whom hunger maketh bold? What of the porkers a-seeking in the dwelling of Ireland? Oh, when the holly stand and holly berries few.
In 1966, Dr. Maulana Karenga invented the tradition of Kwanzaa. Invent a tradition, you might say. You can't just create a tradition out of thin air. The whole point of tradition is that it anchors us to the past, to something people have done for a long time. But Karenga saw a need for Americans of African descent to connect to the cultures of Africa. Most knew very little about these cultures. They didn't know what country their ancestors came from or what tribal traditions were once theirs. Igbo, Ashanti, Bantu. And the popular image of African peoples was dominated by negative stereotypes of primitives, cannibals, people so naive and incompetent that they couldn't rule themselves. Colonialization was seen as their fate. Timbuktu was shorthand for an exotic and backwards place rather than revered as the capital of an ancient and accomplished kingdom and home of a library that had been as great as Alexandria's until, like Alexandria's, it was destroyed by invaders. Karenga also thought that Christmas was as colonized as anything else in US life, dominated by white culture, and that African Americans needed an alternative. So he created this holiday that began the day after Christmas and ran for 7 days and dedicated each day to a principle from African life, from umoja, unity, to imani, faith. Now, Kwanzaa is celebrated by people of the African diaspora who have made it their own. Many of them don't shun Christmas, as Karenga did, but celebrate both. They have added a second A to the end of its name. Karenga spelled it K-W-A-N-Z-A. Perhaps they did this from a sense that it looked more like the Swahili language that it was borrowing from, and perhaps to make it 7 letters long, the way the holiday is 7 days long. The US Postal Service now issues Kwanzaa-themed stamps. The president sends out Kwanzaa greetings, and Hallmark now sells Kwanzaa cards. And like those who bemoan the commercialization of Christmas and other religious festivals, some who celebrate Kwanzaa have some regrets about these changes. In short, Kwanzaa is like any other tradition, mixed in intent, ever-changing, and subject to the pressures of its time and place. It may have started in an unusual way, but maybe it's not that unusual. A book called The Invention of Tradition by Eric Hobsbawm traces how traditions revered as many generations old or even ancient are often very recent inventions. Cover your ears if you're Scottish. The tartans that were supposedly developed by each ancient clan to identify them, so that McDonald's, for example, have been wearing red and green for hundreds and hundreds of years? Nope, he says. The tartans were a modern invention, created to forge a sense of identity in a rapidly changing Highland culture. The costume of the kilt goes back further than its plaid, but it is also far from ancient. It was actually invented in 1726. Another winter holiday, Hanukkah, has strayed similarly to Kwanzaa. What is the central story of Hanukkah? As I said, we'll hear it in full next week, but in brief, it celebrates a long-shot military victory over an occupying force and the miracle that followed, the oil in the temple lamp lasting far beyond what was only 1 day's supply, leading to the 8-night festival we celebrate today. Guess what? The story about the oil isn't in the Bible at all. Not even in Maccabees, which tells the story of the war, and strictly speaking, isn't in the Bible either. It's in the Apocrypha. No, it was long after, when the Talmud was being compiled, that the rabbis told a legend of the miraculous oil. And any observant US American Jew will tell you that Hanukkah is not a major holiday. In religious significance, it is at best a distant seventh place behind the Sabbath, the high holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and the three planting and harvest holidays of which most non-Jews and many Jews have only heard of one, Passover. The other two are Sukkot and Shavuot. In Israel, Hanukkah gets little attention. It's clear why it is a big deal in the United States. Because the dominant culture is Christian, and those in a minority religion can feel pretty swamped. In December, Christianity is inescapable. Its founding story and theology are literally in the airwaves in every store. No wonder Judaism's December holiday has grown over the generations. But Christmas is no different in this regard. No one really knows what time of year Jesus was born. There's good historical reason to think it was springtime. But the holiday of Christmas was placed at the time of the birth of Sol Invictus, the unconquerable sun. That's S-U-N. Why then? If not that the Roman pagans had a big holiday then, and the newer minority downtrodden Christians needed a boost at that time of year. What better time to celebrate the birth of their own unconquerable God? Traditions are about the past. They connect us to generations that we never met, passing along their values and beliefs, joys, fears, and hopes like a relay runner's baton. But they also change and emerge. We create them all the time as we need them. We seem to be tradition-generating animals. Congregations are perfect examples. Do something 2 years running, and it becomes something we always do. Hard times spark new traditions. They always have. Our story today told how in the depths of the Cold War, a Christmas tradition was born. To this day, NORAD, which is part of the Department of Defense, has a grim purpose to track possible missile and air attacks and alert the Pentagon to any threats. What might come out of the tribulations of this year, when half the family is once again gathered around one table? Will we still bring the other half in via video conference? Our Christmas Eve service this year will seek to replicate our traditions as we turn out the lights in our homes, turn on our videos, and see each other's faces lit by candlelight. Will it match the magic of being shoulder to shoulder? Will it have some other magic we can't anticipate that we then want to continue even when we don't have to be in separate places? We'll find out a week from Thursday. Sometimes the challenges traditions face are global, like COVID, and sometimes they affect just one family. An Indonesian writer named Bivasyana Kestabrilia, who occasionally chronicles her family's holiday traditions, wrote in 2018 about some changes in the way they were honoring the Muslim festival of Eid. She says, "There are some changes that took place this year. For instance, my sister and I walked to the nearest praying site by ourselves instead of driving over there with our grandfather, because he is sadly unable to join us at the moment. It felt kind of nice, though, since the streets are rather quiet. With the religious chantings echoing all through town, it felt rather peaceful and serene. I wonder if this has become a new tradition for them now. Does she and her sister now walk from home to the mosque each time, making this quiet time part of the preparation for their prayers? This is another reason traditions are always dynamic. Their forms and meanings evolve over time in response to our changing needs. Families, after all, do not stay the same over the years. New family members are adopted or born. Some marry in or divorce away. Others die. Traditions hold things steady through times of change while also taking new forms to incorporate the changes. As B.B. Castabriglia says, I think with family time, things are bound to be ever-changing. And it's important to embrace the changes while also sticking to the traditions. If you are feeling like a few more traditions might anchor you more firmly to the things that matter to you, pay attention to opportunities to create new ones. You will begin to see them all around. The things we're already doing on a regular basis are fertile ground for traditions. This is one reason so many people add some kind of tradition to mealtimes, such as a moment's pause to give thanks. In fact, the song that we just sang, We Give Thanks, is a mealtime grace. One version of it says, instead of for this time we share, the words, for this food we share. A favorite short song or phrase, or just the brief holding of hands around the table can quickly turn into a mealtime tradition. Anything we find ourselves doing and saying, this was nice, let's do it again, may have the makings of a tradition. Or, for that matter, it doesn't have to be all that nice. A friend recently shared a tradition revolving around the movie This Christmas, the cast of which includes Chris Brown, the rapper, singer, and composer who unfortunately earned a lot of notoriety due to his repeated assaults on his girlfriend, the singer Rihanna. My friend says, only partly tongue-in-cheek, that it is now a Christmas tradition for her and her husband to watch the movie This Christmas together, for one of them to say, good movie, such a shame about Chris Brown, and for the other to shake their head in sad agreement. One of our family traditions, a happier one, is to read the Latka that couldn't stop screaming aloud every year. The book is about as old as our child, and we bought it when she was tiny and read it to her. I distinctly remember the occasion when she was 3 years old, and we met the author, Lemony Snicket, at a community event. We told him she liked the book, and he bent down and said to her, "What did that Latka do?" To which she responded with an obliging, "Ah!" Once she learned to read, she took over the reading duties. And in recent years, when we've had a couple dozen friends and family over to eat latkes during Hanukkah, she has read it aloud and coached everyone in their part, which of course is to scream when the latke does. Tonight, with only the three of us at the Latke Fest, the tradition will continue and help tide us over until the time when friends can once again fill our home. But my point is that we didn't set out to create a tradition. We just pulled out the book a couple of years running because Hanukkah, and it stuck. Some things we do will stick and some won't. A really good way to know which ones have the makings of a tradition is to listen to children. Children are often the most conservative force in a family because they thrive on the routine and the familiar. Something that from adults' perspective has only been done once or twice, from a child's perspective has been done every year in his memory. If a child says, "Are we going to do X again?" unless she says it with a groan, it's a good bet that she's already turning it into a tradition. But you don't have to have a child nearby to create traditions. As I noted before, any group of people, such as a congregation, will create them. Do something once to try it out. If it was enjoyable or meaningful, repeat it at a regular interval, the next morning, the next week, or the next year, and lo and behold, you may have a tradition. Time is an ingredient, yes. One of the things that makes traditions powerful is the knowledge that people have carried them out and carried them on for many years, for many generations. But sometimes that knowledge is in fact a belief based on fog and smoke. And sometimes time is a luxury. African Americans are often cut off from their pasts. Native Americans had the brick walls of institutions erected between grandparents and grandchildren, tribal leaders and the new generations, with the old unable to pass traditions on to the young. Often the descendants of immigrants don't know the traditions of those first generations, far less those from the old country. Maybe the immigrant generation was too traumatized by their past to want to pass it on. Maybe they saw safety and promise in assimilating, so they shed these traditions in order to become American. And so we may have been cut off from our roots. We can't live without them, though, so we grow new ones. As Monique Wittig says, we try to remember, but failing that, we invent. And those still to come will revel in the traditions we create and sustain today. As a part of the Free Church tradition, we accept no money from any governmental body, nor do we receive money from any ecclesiastical authority, in order that we shall remain free to govern ourselves. In addition to their annual pledges, each week our members and friends may choose to give an additional contribution as a public witness that we are and shall remain a free church. With our offering, we also assert that we're part of the interdependent web of existence. 1 week per month, your gift goes to the community organization we have chosen as our justice partner. So we gave last week's offering to Outlet. The order of service gives a QR code and link, and also information on using text to give via Give Lively. Please give generously. If you are visiting for the first time, you're our guest. Please just enjoy the music as our gift to you. please join in as Bruce leads us in singing Hine Ma Tov.
This hymn, Hine Ma Tov, or How Good It Is a round. The piece is built with two short sections that each repeat. So when we get to the second section, where the melody goes a little bit higher in the voice, that would be the place where you could begin singing from the beginning of the hymn if you wish to do it as a round. And I will show you on the screen where that happens when I play through the melody for the first time. Then we'll sing the whole thing through together with repeats 3 times. And the piece does end with one last repetition of the first section. So this is Hine Ma Tov, or How Good It Is and How Pleasant.
We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. May what we bring forward from the past bless us and bless the future.
Frozen in the snow, roses
Voice in the distance, calling the night. On winter and fullness, you speak of the light. Gentle on the ear, you whisper softly. Rumors of a dawn so embracing, breathless love awaits darkest souls. Soon will we know of the
Thank you, choir. Thanks, Veronica, and thank you, Bruce, for so much work bringing the choir to us in this way. It's really special. Everyone, please stay after the benediction for our virtual coffee time. You will be invited to small group conversations in our breakout rooms, or you can stay here in the main room with me to discuss the service, maybe share some traditions in either of those settings. If you have the latest version of Zoom, version 5.4.6, you will be able to freely move between breakout rooms on your own. The rooms will stay open for about half an hour. Now, please unmute yourself and turn on your video while we say our benediction together. Go out into the world
in peace.
be of good courage.
Good courage.
Fast,
Fast what is good.
what is good.
No one evil. In the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Rejoice in beauty. Love with word and deed. All beings.
Honor all beings. Amen.